What's up, everyone, and welcome into the Buffalo Sports Collective. It is Friday, May 24th, 2024. As always, I am PK alongside my co-host Phil for episode 287. Phil, this is our final Friday show until next year. And by next year, I mean next December. We're going to be taking a 6-month hiatus of 2 shows a week like we did last summer. But we'll grind out this Friday show and get some BSC nominees out of the way. Phil, how are you doing this last Friday for our show until December?
It's fitting that the last Friday before the little off season here that we had some technical difficulties before the show kicked off, because why not? You know, we've made it this long for a very long, grueling season of 2 episodes a week without too many hiccups or issues, so why not throw it out there on the last Friday? So that was a little bit stressful on my end, but we're settling into another pretty fun episode. I like these episodes quite a bit because I don't know, we have so many episodes that, you know, because we're only 2 shows a week and we have to dedicate a lot of time to what we do on those 2 shows, and a lot of it is just based on, you know, numbers, stats, still our feelings and opinions for sure, but we don't get too many opportunities until the off season to really have, I don't know, just calmer and just more opinion based episodes that are a little bit more free flowing, not quite as structured, and not quite as, you know, let's talk about the offense, let's talk about the defense, let's talk about this guy, these numbers. And it's a little bit more, you know, there's still a structure to it for sure, but it's just a little bit more out there, which is a lot of fun for us because we just don't get that opportunity as much as we would like, because this isn't our job. You know, this is a side thing that we do, and it takes a ton of work to do, but it's, you know, it's not what we get paid for to live our lives. So, you know, we don't get the opportunity to have a 5-day-a-week show where we get to, you know, break down an episode or break down a game on one episode, but then fill 3 episodes with just one big topic or 2 topics that we can just kind of go off on for, you know, 45 minutes. We don't really get that opportunity too often. So I am looking forward to that. And this show, and even our last show that we called the, was it organized chaos kind of idea?
Controlled chaos, yeah.
It's a little bit more like that, and I like those shows quite a bit. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we don't have as many things we got to check off in a show to try to get done. These, I do agree. I like our summer shows better because there's less stuff that we have to get through, because like the Friday shows throughout the entire Bandit season are typically all based on, hey, what does the other team look like? What are the milestones? What's our predictions? And so on and so forth. And then the Monday shows reacting to the game that we just saw. The summer is pretty much just, okay, this is what happened in the week that led up to the show, but everything else is just like, hey, let's be commissioner for the day. Hey, let's look at what our bold predictions were for the year. It's kind of just a fun transition from the grind to, okay, this is just a nice, relaxed 6 months. And I do think that was, if you listen to the anniversary episode, the 3rd anniversary episode, which if you haven't, go back and listen to it. I believe it was the end of April. Kind of talked about it. This nice hiatus that we kind of quote unquote take, which isn't even a hiatus because we're still recording once a week and doing other stuff. But I think that was one of our best decisions, because the grind of 2 episodes a week the entire summer when there wasn't a lot to talk about because the Bills, Sabres, and Bandits were all off was a lot. And we got to be extra creative when there's 2 shows. So we got to be less creative when there's just 1. But if you are going to stick with us, remember, this is our last Friday show until December. The Monday show will be our final Monday show. And then I believe, what day of the week is that, Phil? Let me pull it up. I remember I did it in the article. June 5th. I just pulled it up now. June 5th is going to be our first Wednesday show all through June, July, August, September, October, and most of November. And we'll be kicking back off 2 shows a week. Likely the end of November or early December, pretty much whenever the schedule comes out. And we have to be obligated to go back to 2 shows a week.
And excited too.
Very excited. Yeah, it's going to be a long off season of relaxing, but also really wanting Buffalo Bandits action back, especially after a championship victory. But again, today and Monday, final shows until we go into our off-season mode. So if you want to wish us a fun summer, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Don't forget to follow our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out our website at buffalosportscollective.com. Phil's final article of the Buffalo Bandits season was out and is still out. It was released on Tuesday. You can also check out our store by clicking on the link tree on all our social media sites, or at the top of the website by hitting that shop tab. You can represent the BSC on the go and look for the time breakdowns in the description of the show. There's not going to be a ton of descriptions or a ton of time breakdowns on this one. We're just going to be breaking down anything else that we want to talk about from anything we missed from the Monday show, talking about the championship victory, and then we'll dive into our nominations for the third annual Bandits BSC Awards show that will be airing on Monday when we crown some victors. So Phil, before we dive into anything, we got the news. It was rumored, it was expected, but it's finally official now. Max Adler has officially retired from lacrosse. That includes the summer leagues, that includes NLL. He took the season off this year. It was known before the season even kicked off that, hey, his real-time job conflicts with what's going on right now. It was just too much work this year. And today, right before we recorded, he officially announced his retirement. But this man, all he did from 2017 to 2023 was win. He was either in a championship or winning the championship. He signed on midway through the Bandits season 3 seasons ago now. And he lost in the final. Well, the team lost in the finals versus Colorado. But the following year, he was there the whole year. He was the one that made the roof blow off of KeyBank Center in Game 3 versus Colorado when they went on to win it by his face-off win, go down and just score on Dylan Ward. Never heard the building as loud as that moment right then. But a huge congratulations to Max Adler. Well wishes on his continued success outside of the game of lacrosse, because that man is just an unstoppable force no matter what he is doing.
Yeah, he was, I mean, we are, I feel like, a conflicted show on the face-off representative, because we're still not 100% sold that the Bandits need one, but at the same time, he was a lot of fun, right? And he was great when he came on halfway through the season, and then they ended up losing, but he did a good job. Then he learned a lot about the game of indoor lacrosse into that next season, had a really good full season, then the team won it all, and like you mentioned, blew the roof off the place. It's one of the loudest we have ever heard that building is when he did his face-off win straight to a goal to really clinch that Colorado game and end it and end that championship essentially. So a lot of fun. I think he was just a great addition. I mean, even as just a person, a teammate, everything kind of about him. He just seems like such a great guy. So wish him all the best. And if he's at all as successful as he was as a lacrosse player as he is in life, I think he will be doing just fine.
Yeah, I'm always seeing those Instagram pictures of just him on a golf course outside of ESPN studios and or the lot that they have there. Just
he's doing fine
on the green. I think he's doing pretty good. I think he likes what he's doing. But Phil, we'll dive into our next spot here. Anything else that you want to wrap up from the NLL season or the Buffalo Bandits season in general? I know we're going to be going over our nominations, so a lot of the stuff's going to be talked about then, but I guess anything really you want to tie up that we might have missed in our Controlled Chaos episode on Monday?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, I think it was just the adversity that the team faced, and listening to Buchanan's post-game interview, even him saying it was one of the late games. I think he said the Vancouver game, that the team was just kind of beating each other up and starting to get at each other and not play the kind of lacrosse and not be as tight of a group as we are used to them seeing. And I think it's just really interesting because they really haven't had any kind of pushback for a very long time. And I think we kind of forgot that headed into this year, or just even when they were 5-6, like they really haven't had anything remotely near that for multiple years when they finished, 14-4 at the top of the standings for a few years in a row and made the championship. Everything's just been so easy. Even 3 years ago, out of the canceled season when they did go all the way to the championship, and they got too full of themselves for sure. And even though I still love our party shirts, I still remember kind of their attitude throughout that whole season, which while it was working was amazing and a lot of fun until it came crashing down in the championship. And then it wasn't so fun watching another team celebrate on your floor. But they're, it's a party kind of mentality that they were just cruising through the season, cruised all the way to the finals, and just had a really fun, uplifting kind of season. And yes, it didn't work out in the finals. And then they learned from that. The next year, again, 14-4, pretty much cruised through the season. And then they absolutely blew the doors off in playoffs and just cruised right to the finals. And then had that little bit of adversity in the Colorado away game. But that season seemed like, yes, they were winning and everything was coming still not too bad, but the offense banged up, a lot of, 1-goal wins, and things were a little bit tighter, but you could tell that their focus was just so much, they were a much more driven team. They weren't just taking anything for granted. And then this season was really the first season in a long time that we've seen them have some true adversity where they're sitting under 500 for the first time in a really long time. They're sitting outside of a playoff picture for the first time in a really long time. We're not even talking the 4th seed, the 3rd seed, the 2nd seed. We're talking, hey, can this team still make playoffs? And I mean, we never lost faith here. And that was the big thing that the team kind of kept reiterating in their interviews, was the team never gave up on themselves. They just had to go out and do what they do best, stick to the game plan, know that they're a really good team, and it's just kind of going to fall into place. And that's exactly what it did. But just really interesting to see that side of the Bandits, because we really have not had to see that for quite a while. I mean, this team's just been cruising at number 1 for a long time now and making all these finals. And it was interesting to see how they would face a little bit of adversity. And it was kind of nice to hear Buchanan say that they got at each other a little bit. I mean, it just makes them human, right? It's not all just, sunshine and rainbows all the time in that locker room. Like, yeah, they're great friends, but they're still really fierce competitors. And when you're having a season that's starting to have some struggles, they're going to get at each other a little bit. And it was kind of just interesting to hear that inside look that, yeah, it wasn't great in the locker room for a little bit there, but then everything kind of settled down, calmed down. They got back to playing Bandits lacrosse and went all the way to the finals with it.
Yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly. I don't have a ton to add about the season, but they always say when you have to take a cross-country trip with a team, it can either do wonders for your team or it could do really bad things for your team, and it can kind of expose it. And we broke it down that Vancouver's defense was really, really good in that time, and they were able to stifle the offense, and the defense at that time was still struggling, keeping opponents under 13 goals. And I'll get into what Vince was saying on another podcast in a second, but I think the flight home, where they kind of just hashed it all out and got it all out, did wonders. And that all the players were saying that was kind of the turning point. I think JT even said it at one point that the turning point was the Vancouver loss and the long flight home. And it's a long flight home if you're just bitter at each other. So I think them airing it all out was the big turning point of the season. And I think we even said it on the podcast. You're sitting 5-6. You just lost to a team that had 2 or 3 wins at that time. It's an embarrassing look. And I think they took that to heart, where they just got embarrassed on opponent's floor of a team that you should have wiped the floor with. What do we have to do to turn the season around? And you can credit the acquisition of Connor Farrell and Paul Dawson and Bomberry coming back and Zach Belter coming back and Cam Wires getting that experience as well. And the defense just finally getting fully healthy as another part of it. But if you add all that in and they didn't have that Vancouver loss and that flight home where they talked everything about it, I don't know if you're sitting here as a back-to-back champion. But the only other things I have is Mad Vince was on with Lacrosse Classified, those guys, and it was a very, very interesting talk that they had. And not a lot of this is about the championship, because that's already been hashed out and everybody's already talked about that. But it was kind of just like everything else that I picked out of this was, and Chugger was already on that show. I believe it was last week as well, Lacrosse Classified. They've had Burn on, Josh on, Chugger on, and Mad Vince on in the last month and a half. So it's tons of great interviews there. But they were talking about Mad Vince, and it was like, yeah, Chugger in the handshake line was already on my back. Like, hey, no other person has ever repeated or has ever had 2 three-peats in the handshake line, Chuck was already thinking about the following year. I also learned that, everything that we were expecting, that Dawson was great for Belter and Wires, that both of those guys are big guys in front of the net, and Dawson's a big guy. So it's a huge thing to take from this season, is all the invaluable experience that those two young core pieces on the back end took from Paul Dawson. Even if Paul Dawson doesn't come back the following year, which we're both hoping for, those lessons that he was able to preach to a Zach Belter or a Cam Wires or a Dylan Robinson or any of those younger guys are going to be invaluable lessons from here on forth. He also expressed that, last year was more of a relief that, hey, we finally got over that hump. We were finally able to bring this championship back to Buffalo. And it was Jake Elliott that just goes, that excitement on your face looked a lot different than last year. And Vince even goes, yeah, last year was the relief. This year was the excitement that, hey, we were able to overcome the adversity. I was hurt for the first time in my career. I was able to come over the rough roads like that. And it was just pure joy. Last year was relief. This year was pure joy. And then the last thing I took from this one, Phil, I don't know how many people out there even know it. There were 2 trophies out there, and one goes back to the league office, but the other one stays with the team. I don't know if he didn't really say if that was the case last year. And if he did, I missed it. There were 2 of replica trophies on the field and in the locker room after the win this year. I think that's smart, because what the players do with the trophy, it takes a bit of a beating. But I didn't realize that, and I absolutely love it that there's 2 different trophies that the team kind of won. One goes back to league, and the other one the team gets to play with.
Yeah, I remember with the creation of the trophy, like one of the only stipulations from the league, I believe, was that it had to have a cup aspect to it, and it had to be like able to be drank out of. And I don't know, like you just mentioned, I don't know when that got switched, but I even remember on the field, they were already adding beer to the top of that trophy and drinking out of it. So it would be interesting to go back and see, because I imagine everyone that got to lift it, I have to assume that's the real trophy, because that's the one that was walked out. So I don't know.
Vince was in the locker room, and he goes, he handed somebody the trophy, and then he looks across the room, and Zach Belter has it in his hands, and he's just going, wait, what the heck is going on here?
Love it, though. Yeah, I think the only other thing, which kind of a little bit ties into the Paul Dawson thing, that I heard from Dietrich in one of his interviews with Buffalo Sabres Live, was it's the same thing that's been, it's been an issue for the Bandits for a long time. It's going to be an issue again, and we'll talk about it more as things start to ramp up, or we have all off season to kind of discuss it. But once again, this team is in a monster roster crunch headed into the off season with 3 first-round picks, and we don't have to get crazy into it, but just the more you think of this team and Spanger and Sweeting that are possibly both coming back, and that already has a loaded roster with practice squad players that are loaded, with healthy scratches every single week that are loaded, and you're trying to add players that are already currently on the roster, not even thinking about future ones. And then you got 3 first-round draft picks, and you got the 3rd, 2nd-round picks. You got 4 in the top 20. Like, this roster, again, is going to be a bit of a nightmare. And Dietrich kind of said it right away that it's looking like, I don't really know what choice they have, but it's looking likely that some players that they do not want to lose are going to have to be let go, simply because you cannot keep this many players on the roster. And again, it just brings up like Dawson. If he wants to come back, somebody else has to go, because someone like Sweeting might get healthy. Someone like Spanger might get healthy headed into next season. So the roster crunch is going to be insane, and it's going to be very interesting to see what they do with 4 picks inside the top 20 this year at the draft. But we have a long off season, but again, just a monster roster crunch again for a very talented team.
So, Phil, before the nominees are officially announced, let's give way to our first sponsor of this show, Tap That Tap Room.
Tap That Tap Room, which is no longer showing Bandits games because the season is officially concluded. They are at 363 Delaware Street in Tonawanda, New York. They are Buffalo's first women-owned self-pour bar, featuring 30 consistently rotating taps, offering a variety of beer, cider, sours, seltzers, and malt beverages.
Now, Phil, they might not be showing Buffalo Bandits games anymore, but that does not mean they don't have plenty of other things to keep you entertained all summer. Friday, that means today, Schitt's Creek trivia at 7:30. I'm not locking it in, but there are rumors that one of these podcast hosts here could be in attendance for that because he absolutely loves Schitt's Creek. Phil, I'm pointing at myself. Thank you, Tuesdays. Starting next Tuesday, 10% off for first responders, teachers, and military. And then summer Sundays are back 3 to 6, 10% off all taps. If you have any interest in this or any other posted events, check out their Facebook page for any of those and at taproom.com for what's on tap and what's on deck. Phil, it is finally time. We waited all year for this, and all the players definitely waited all year for this. They're definitely tuning into this because it's the most coveted award known to athletes and entertainers all over the world. It is the nominations for the 3rd annual Buffalo Bandits BSC Awards show. We're going to be reflecting on the season that was for the Buffalo Bandits, 11-7 in the regular season, perfect in the playoffs, 5-0, and your repeat 2 back-to-back 2023-24 NLL champions. Phil, just an absolute star-studded event with absolute talent littered through all these nominees.
Yeah, I assume because we're not a live show that, I mean, all the players and they either get together all at one,
yeah.
it's all like one house and listen to it together, or they all say like, hey, tomorrow at 7 p.m., everybody turn it on. We'll just kind of, Facebook chat or live stream each other, and we'll all listen in very intently to the BSC Awards show. And I got to imagine that is exactly what they're going to be doing Friday night.
Yeah, I'm sure Scott Loeffler and Steve Dietrich and John Tavares all organized a giant team meeting, and they might be down at the KeyBank Center playing it on the Jumbotron that's still there right now. Now that we have video with all this, we didn't have video last year, so we're probably, wave to the crowd, Phil, we're probably on the Jumbotron. No, we're joking. We clearly know the players do not watch this. They just expect the awards in the mail. But Phil, let's get this started. And I'm going to get this pretty little design on the TV behind me. So as long as it's popping up and you can see behind me, those are all the nominees. So if you can zoom in, you can see them before I start announcing them. But MVP, we got 5 nominees this year, Phil. Number 1, Josh Byrne. Number 2, Dane Smith. Number 3, Matt Vince. Number 4, Steve Priolo. And number 5, Paul Dawson. Last year, Matt Vince. Year 1, Matt Vince. Phil, can he repeat the trifecta of winning MVP for this season?
I'm going to say this a lot, probably at every single award we kind of go over, but not only is there a massive difference, at least this season, between the Sabres award show and the Bandits award show, but just the competition for all of these within even our show, and we kind of went back and forth with some of these names, and we had differences on, our opinions, and we ended up, going through the winners ourselves.
There's 8 awards, and we had differences on 4 of them.
Right. And I think that's great. I mean, it's a really good thing to see that you and I feel differently about something as simple as MVP. I mean, yes, it's not a simple award, but the fact that there's so many different nominations and so many different players on this team that could win, team MVP, defender of the year, offensive player of the year. Like, it's great to see the number of nominations for all of these, because that means, that's how incredible of a season that each one of these players had and that the team had as a whole. But going through the MVP itself, I mean, one thing that Josh Byrne absolutely has over Dane Smith, I believe, I could be wrong, but I don't think I am, is that I don't think Smith ever won MVP and a championship in the same year. So Byrne has that, and he was finals MVP. So he's got a lot of MVPs already under his belt from, really high up professionals that considered him MVP. So it's going to be tough to dispute others. And then Dane had the monster season that I don't want to say is quietly going away, but for a record-breaking assist season and Josh getting MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, and Finals MVP, I feel like for the first time. So, I mean, Josh absolutely deserves this, but...
You called it, though. You called it before the season started.
I did.
That Josh was going to take Smith's limelight.
And he finally did. And did he ever? I mean, he is just, he swept pretty much all awards you could possibly get in the NLL individually. And honestly, again, just Dane's incredible year of record breaking assists. We've never seen over 100 assists, breaks his own record, and he's kind of quietly fading in the background to Josh Burns' incredible season as well. So interesting to see just such a incredible monster record breaking season from Smith kind of just take the back seat to what Josh was able to do this year. And then Vince, once again, just being the ageless wonder that he is, that continues to somehow get better every single season. And even you and I had some doubts, not that he wasn't the goalie to have, not that he was, there's anyone else in the league that we wanted over him. He was still our show's number one goalie by far, but he wasn't making the mind-blowing saves we are used to seeing. And we thought maybe, not that this was going to be his downfall by any means, but just it wasn't 110% Matt Vince. It was 100% Matt Vince. And then he turned it on, as the defense did in the second half of the season, and turned into invincible Matt Vince. And I mean, the numbers that he had throughout playoffs were insane and also record breaking. And then Priolo had a very quiet year in a weird way, but I think he's finally toning down his aggressive, angry nature a little bit. It's still there for sure. He still gets a little upset during games and at players, but he's definitely toned it down a lot as, the more and more he's matured as a player. And I think what he's been able to bring more and more has been more impressive. But this year was just a very quietly great year for Priolo, and then Dawson was just a monster addition to this team.
Yeah, I mean, Josh and Dane were the clear front runners for the forwards to be nominated for this one. When you're nominated for the NLL MVP, it would be a shame if you weren't for the BSC award show. Matt Vince, like you said, once the defense fully got healthy and they added the pieces of Bomberry, Belter, and Paul Dawson back there, he stepped up his game and he went from that 100% back to the 110% Matt Vince that we know. So remind me next year when he is playing, never to doubt the great and powerful Matt Vince ever again. Steve Perillo, like you said, a quiet, great season. He's just that steady force back there, and he had no penalty minutes like midway through the season. And then he was like, I've been quiet for too long, and then got in foul trouble. And then Paul Dawson, the impact that he made on the defensive end and the change of philosophy to go for those block shots. It's been well documented on this show, and it's been well documented everywhere about the change that the mindset change that he instilled in that defense, where it was just like he was blocking shots off the head. That inspires other players to do the exact same. So those five are clear and obvious the MVPs for this year. It was very tough to nominate or to decide on the one, which you'll have to wait till Monday to listen to. So we'll move on to the Defender of the Year. 4 nominees here. Steve Perillo is the 2-time defending champion here. He's up for the award once again, but he has 3 competitors that are out for the glory. It's Nick Weiss, Ian McKay, and Paul Dawson. Defender of the Year also encompasses Transition Player of the Year for us. So, it's Defender / Transition Player of the Year. But Steve Perillo, Nick Weiss, Ian McKay, Paul Dawson. Phil, take it away.
Yeah, Steve Priolo, I mean, we talked a lot about already, so I'll let that one go. I'll get into Paul Dawson in a moment. Nick Weiss had a also pretty quiet season. I mean, both of them, from what we know them to be, and I mean, the Nick Weiss kind of came out when he got punched in the face. That's kind of the Nick Weiss and the heart and soul, and when he jumped almost completely over the boards, and he almost did. If you watch that video,
about it. His foot was climbing up.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, I think he was thinking about sitting over the glass, but that seems like it'd be wildly uncomfortable. So I'm happy he didn't, and also kind of happy he didn't go over for his own safety. But just that image is going to be so burned into our brains for the longest time, because it was an incredible image of him just all the way over the glass, trying to get as close as he can to the fans. And, that's just the Nick Weiss we know, but he was pretty quiet as far as aggression goes. Yes, he still had his moments. Yes, I mean, there was a few penalties he got away with. Punching a guy in the face was one of them that was not called, but I think for the most part, he was also able to kind of still be aggressive, still be Nick Weiss, but still tone the penalties down quite a bit. But his transition game, I think, took a massive step forward this year, while still having the caused turnovers, the loose balls, the really great defensive play. I think his transition ability and the points he was able to get this year kind of took a step forward. Ian McKay is a tough one to talk about. He did lead the team by quite a bit in loose balls. He was up there with caused turnovers. He tied Nick Weiss in points. So all of that looks fantastic, but he's tough to talk about because of what you mentioned. He's been truly a transition kind of hybrid player a lot. And it was just a weird season for him, not necessarily in a bad way, but in a half playing offense, half playing defense, some games taking, a lot more offensive shifts, some games taking a lot more defensive shifts, and mid game switching what position he's actually playing. It was just a strange season for him to kind of get a grasp on what he was doing. But I think that also shows his versatility and what he means to the team, that he has that true hybrid flexibility to go up and play a few shifts on offense if they need him to go be a lockdown defender on defense, play that incredible loose ball, scooping, transition kind of player that really just brings it all together. And I think he also a little bit quietly, because of his former season of playing way too much offense while the offense was brutally injured. I think he had, I don't know, the defense as a whole just seemed, because probably of the first half of the year, had a very quiet season. And then in the second half, it was the players that kind of came back, and the players that stood out more were the Belters, the Wires getting better, the Dawson, the Bomberry, like the players that really stepped up in the second half to kind of help the defense, are the players that seem to shine, or kind of just, I don't know, are more prevalent in your head of the players on the team, because they were the ones that were kind of just in the forefront of that team being, the defense being turned around. But these other players were still really good throughout the entire year. And a lot of those 1-goal games, they did end up winning, even if it was giving up 13 goals. These guys made it so they didn't get 14 or 15 and lose that game. So still a monster crucial part. And then what Priolo and all three of them were able to do in the playoffs was massive. But Dawson, I think one of the big things I saw from Dietrich was, and it's been also mentioned a lot, was just what he was able to take off of Priolo. And Dietrich mentioned that Priolo takes too much on himself, puts too much on himself to be the true leader of the defense, which he has been. He's the captain of the team. He's been that for a really long time. And I think he was just putting too much on himself. And with the hardships of the defense that they had throughout the entire first half of the year, that takes a massive toll on the captain of your defense. Obviously, if the defense is struggling, I'm sure he put a lot of that on himself. So when Dawson came in and could kind of just let him step back a little bit, and Dawson was able to step up as the veteran defender that he is and be that extra voice for Priolo, not only on the field, but off the field. I think it also helped Priolo step his own game up a little bit, that he was just taking a little bit of the weight of the entire defense off of his shoulders so he could focus a little bit more on his game. And I think he also stepped up when Dawson came in. So we've talked about it so much, but the addition of Dawson, which again, you and I not necessarily looked poorly on by any means, but the impact he had was not seen, and did not think that the change he made for the defense was going to happen with his addition, and what he meant to the defense and the entire team that second half and all through playoffs is just incredible. What one player could really do at 38, 39 years old, and what he was able to just bring to the defense and the team was really impressive.
Well, Phil, we're going to have to speed up these nominations because we're already more than halfway through the show. But yeah, the three, the Priolo, Weiss, and McKay, besides Wires, they were the only three that played in all the regular season games. So I think that alone is a testament to their ability to even stay healthy and on the floor and to be the leaders back there. So I think them being on this list is no question. And then Paul Dawson, obviously, we already went through it with the MVP. The way he changed the defense and their mentality back there obviously should be up for this award. So those three of the four there are trying to knock Steve Priolo off the ladder when it comes to Defender of the Year here for the BSC Awards. We'll move on to the Offensive Player of the Year. There are a lot of nominees here, but Dane Smith, he is the two-time defending champion and looking for the three-peat here for the Offensive Player of the Year, just like Defender of the Year and MVP. So let's see if somebody else can win it on the Monday show. But the nominees here, Josh Byrne, Dane Smith, Chris Cloutier, Chase Frazier, Tehoka Nanticoke, Kyle Buchanan, pretty much the main six on the offensive side of the ball. Phil, What are your thoughts on the 6 nominees for the Offensive Player of the Year?
Well, we can skip past Byrne and Smith. We've talked about them
They're
a lot.
worthless. Worthless.
Yeah, they are not very good at lacrosse. The supporting cast, which is the main cast because they're the better players, Chris Cloutier, Chase Fraser, Token Nanico, Kyle Buchanan. This is something that Burden mentioned, and it's something that's known very well, but I think Tavares also mentioned it. It's just something you kind of completely forget about this team and what this quote unquote supporting cast really does. And a lot of times, even you and I don't know about you, I will, I guess, take this brunt of it because I am part of this kind of issue where players like Toke and Nanico, I mean, all of them, Chase Fraser, Cloutier, Buchanan, they're all players that I expect more of. And it's not that they are bad by any means. We know they are incredible players, but what Byrne was kind of mentioning, and Johnny even mentioned, like when they're on a team with 2, I mean, this year, nominated MVPs of the entire league, everything goes through Josh and Dane, and they know that. And the fact that they're okay and willing to put their egos aside and be that teammate first and do all of the dirty work for Dane and Josh, because even if they are equal in talent to these players, everything's going to run through those 2 players. And even with Josh and Dane being as selfless as they are with 82 assists and 101 assists, like they're dishing it out to everybody they possibly can. And most of the times they don't like, the credit and the MVP and the awards. Like they want to put it back on all of their teammates as well. But when you have 2 players like that, everything's going to still go through them. It's going to be weighted toward them. And to have players of this talent like Cloutier, Fraser, Nanico, and Buchanan be able to step aside for those 2 and understand that their role is very different than it would be on a different team. And I mean, Johnny mentioned that Fields is a massive example of a player that did pretty well here, but when he's the number 1 on a team, he was able to flourish. And players like Cloutier and Fraser and Nanico and Buchanan can all be those massive parts of any other offense, but because they're on a team with 2 MVP nominated players and now 2, former MVPs, they have to take a step back to allow those players to do what they do best. And they understand that, and their talent still shines through. I mean, Fraser had monster games, Cloutier had monster games, Nanico is always coming up clutch. This isn't anything against them, but they're just natural ability to be okay with stepping aside. Like Nanico on a different team, I feel like you could see him potentially with the Josh Byrne 50 goals. Same with Fraser, same with Cloutier. Like for these players that are playing at such a high level and so incredible, to just be willing and able to step aside and say, like, I understand you 2 are the main parts of our offense. We will be here for whatever you need. And what that is 30 goals, 31 goals, 23 goals, 27 goals, and a heck of a lot of points to go along with it. So by far, one of the best, if not the best, offenses and supporting cast you could possibly ask for. But every single one of those players on that offense, on these starting roles, could absolutely be a much, much larger part of a different team. And it's just so cool to see that they are willing to put that aside to go to 4 straight finals, to win 2 straight finals. And the championship and the team means more than their individual accolades. And I think they truly show that as a team.
Yeah, I mean, this offense does not look like what it does without those secondary pieces. And everybody already said it. Dane and Josh are going to get theirs week in and week out and game in and game out. But if you don't have those secondary pieces, you're not going to win games. And you had Frazier, who had one of his best statistical seasons. He was 1 goal off his career high. He beat his points high and he beat his assist high. Kluch, he beat his goal high, he beat his assist high, and he beat his points high. Like, even though Dane and Josh were setting records all over the place and getting these awards all over the place, the next 2 closest guys, in Chris Cloutier and Chase Frazier, had career years as well, which is it's insane. Nanico himself put up 43 points. Kyle Buchanan, 47 points. And you can even toss in Brandon Robinson, who just gets 17 points. Those assists that Dane Smith, 101, and Josh Byrne with 82, those 183 assists have to go to somebody. And when you build a team, you want to build it exactly like this. It's just not very many teams can find players that are okay with taking that secondary role. Like you said perfectly, and like everybody said perfectly, Kluch, Frazier, and Nanticoke likely could be the 1A on any other team in the league, or the majority of other teams in the league, but they choose to want to play for this team because they want championships rather than accolades. And I think if you didn't bring it up, and I know JT brought it up, but you brought up what JT did, so I'm giving you the credit here. Connor Fields is the prime example and why everybody should just relax when they were talking about Chase Frazier and Connor Fields. Chase Frazier, Connor Fields. Chase Frazier could do exactly what Connor Fields does for Rochester if those roles were reversed. Like, Fields would be doing what Kluch and Frazier were doing on this team if he was still here. And that's not a knock against Connor Fields. That just preaches how good Josh Byrne and Dane Smith were. So I think all 6 of these Offensive Player of the Year nominees, even if you do not win them, it's impressive that you're even associated with 2 MVP candidates and winners up there as well. But Phil, before we dive into the other 5, like I said, we got to speed these up. Let's dive into our second sponsor of the show, Mr. Sizzles.
Mr. Sizzles is currently at 346 Connecticut Street in Buffalo, New York, but they are opening 2 new locations, one in Clarence and one in Hamburg. Hamburg is looking like it is going to be closer and closer, possibly aiming, hopefully, for July. We will have to wait and see until that official announcement, but they are getting very close to opening that location. It's going to be very exciting. They are open 7 days a week, 11 to 11, with a brunch menu on Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 3.
So, Phil, I made another pairing here. The Goldie Hen, buttermilk fried chicken, golden dip with fried capicola, sweet pickles, and sauteed onions. The only change I would prefer, and this is my only preferred change, is dill pickles over sweet pickles. That's just my preference, but I know there's other people that like sweet pickles. And then I'm going to pair that with a cinnamon crunch milkshake off their new menu that's out in live. Phil, how did I do on this one? Because I feel like I did pretty good. I haven't tried the cinnamon crunch milkshake personally, but this is the pairing I would get.
Yeah, I was going to say personally, I mean, I do love the sandwich, and I am a dill pickle over sweet pickle as well. So I will agree with you there. But once you mentioned the cinnamon crunch milkshake, I will take 2 of those and skip all food because that sounds incredible.
Yeah, I'm not anti-sweet pickle. I just prefer dill pickle.
I'm
going to
eat.
Their food is delicious, so I'm going to eat whatever they put on the sandwich. But absolutely love it. So check out their menu on all their social media sites or at MrSizzles.com. Let's dive back into the nominees here. Now, that's a goal. It's the goal of the year, and there's a lot of nominees here. There was a lot of outstanding goals, and when we both put in our nominees, we were like, oh, wow, none of us have the same. So there's a lot here. Last year's winner was Max Adler. We already talked about his playoff goal. Year 1 was Nick Weiss's game winner in Colorado, or versus Colorado in game 1, the breakaway, which is interesting because both of those ones are breakaways. Maybe that's an indication of what it is here. But here are the nominees. Buckle up. There's a lot of them. And 1 second, let me put it on the board behind me. Bam! There it is. Josh Byrne's Georgia overtime winner. Chase Frazier's game-winning goal versus Toronto in Game 2, where he runs over the bench and gives a big fist pump. Kyle Buchanan's game-tying goal versus Georgia in Round 1, the one that forced overtime. The rebound after Dane Smith's goal shot did not go in. Token Nanticoke's overtime winner versus the Rush. Chase Frazier's hidden ball goal versus Albany in Game 2 of Round 3 of the playoffs. Josh's catch, spin, dunk in Week 15. Josh's one-handed spike goal in Week 2. Buchanan's one-handed behind-the-back goal in Week 5. Brandon Robinson's one-handed dunk goal over Nick Rose in Week 15. Frazier's one-handed wraparound goal in Week 20. And the last one, Burns' behind-the-back pass to Frazier, who went around the world in Week 20. Phil, absolutely star-studded event, and you can kind of say the Buffalo Bandits do not score normal goals ever.
Yeah, I think that the team itself, and this is something they should actually do. This is a serious suggestion, Bandits, if you are listening. They should do, from now on, I don't know why they haven't, they should do their own top 10 goals of the year of just the Bandits, because I think that's at least...
TM, you got to pay us if you do this.
Yeah, I think that's at least 10. that we just listed, and every single one of them could be on there. And honestly, there are quite a few that we
More.
left off, so they should absolutely do that. But I think we have a solid list of half hit you in the emotional feels,
Those
that
ones were
are
mine.
exciting goals that why am
Clutch.
I guess, yeah, that I don't know what word I'm looking for, but I'm lost it. But the clutch goals, the exciting goals that mean a lot, the difference makers in a game, and then you have just the mind blowing.
Yours.
Yeah, we did split it up pretty even, where I picked all the ones that were filthy throughout the entire year, and PK picked all the ones that were really important and clutch throughout the year. And we created a incredible list, and I'm not going to go through them all because you already did, but I do like the split that we have. I think it's going to be interesting to see if we go for an emotional one like that. I mean, Josh Burns, Georgia OT winner, you don't have a championship without it. I mean, not knowing if he doesn't score there, what happens the rest of the game, but still, without that, you potentially lose round one, and we aren't having a very happy conversation the rest of this offseason here. But so that's a big one. And then you got all the just ridiculous goals that they come up with out of absolutely nowhere throughout the entire season, and should be a fun competition for that one.
Sorry for everybody out there. Reader was barking, so I have a new recording podcast partner in the recording booth now. So
I didn't hear.
Yeah, Reader's in here with me. But we'll move on. Yeah, it's so many good goals. I'm not going to go through them again. You got better. This is the most improved player award. Last year, we gave it to Ian McKay. He got even better this year. And then year one, we gave it to Josh Byrne. He definitely got even better. So you definitely want to win this award because you set career milestones and you possibly even win MVPs. But here are the nominees for the You Got Better award. Cam Wires, Zach Belter, Connor Farrell, Justin Martin, Dylan Robinson, and Chris Cloutier. Phil, some big-time nominees here and a lot of new names to the list.
Yeah, I mean, you got 3 rookies, which does help. I mean, hopefully,
well.
This does not always happen, but you hope that they continue to get better throughout the entire season. Wires was thrown to the fire immediately due to the defensive injuries. And I mean, Johnny mentioned it multiple times throughout the year that it's not something you would necessarily do with a rookie. Oftentimes you want to have him play a game, sit a game, watch a game, look at some film, figure out what you're doing, play a game, sit, play, sit. And because of all the injuries, they were like, all right, you're in, good luck. And he did not do great to start the season. And it was kind of expected, right? I mean, Wires was a rookie, headed into a tough situation, and it looked like it. But throughout the year, he got much, much better. And then when Dawson came, he got even better and took his game to another level. Belter, same kind of situation. He started injured, so you can only kind of go up from there. And once he was in the lineup, he played really, really well. I don't think we really saw his game take too many steps back or forward. It was just very steady from the second he went in. But to start the season injured and then, not be active for a little while, it's very tough on a player, even if they are a rookie. So good to see him get in the lineup and then continue to improve. And I mean, it's going to be really hard to ever forget that play where it was the no goal because of him pushing someone in the crease, and then his hustle to get off the field that swung the momentum of that game in Toronto. It was just a monster play by Belter, and it just shows the improvement that he created throughout the entire season. Farrell came in mid-season, a lot like Adler did in 2 years ago, but only played 7 games, finished with 56% of his faceoff wins, which is pretty good for someone trying to learn the box game. And I think he was an interesting one that from one half to another, from one game to another, you could see him learning and trying to adjust his own game. I mean, if he had a really bad first half, you would kind of see the adjustments he would make in his game in the second half to whoever he's going up against. So really cool to see when you have one job. And this isn't necessarily a knock, even though I think it kind of is, but when you have one job like that and you're struggling with it, you really only have that to focus on. So it's not like Dane or Josh or anyone else that, like, maybe they're having a bad defensive game, hustling back and stopping transition that you can kind of fix with scoring a couple goals. You're not scoring, but you can still get assists and you can still help the team in other ways. When you only do faceoffs and you're not doing very well at faceoffs, that's all you got. There's no other way to kind of make up for that performance. So really cool to see him focus in on what he was doing wrong and try to correct it even throughout a game. Martin, as we will discuss a little bit later as well, is a complete ghost on this team. I don't know if anybody knows he's on the team, but that's how good he is. And that is something that we've talked a lot about with defenders, that you don't want to know who they are. If you don't know their name on defense, that's honestly probably better, because most times defenders get talked about in a bad light because they're doing something wrong or they just got burned, and that's when you know their name. And Martin, nobody knows who he is. And that's, again, on defense, a really good thing. He is an absolutely incredible, not talked about player, and he goes very, very hidden, but is very, very good and is continued to improve his game. Dylan Robinson, I think his game was interesting. I think you especially, and I think me as well, we wanted him both to kind of step up in the transition game because we saw that ability in him, that speed in him. It seemed like something he would kind of naturally step into. And I think instead he focused on his defense and became an even better defender and less of a transition player, which is perfectly fine because he did a really great job playing on defense. And when he went down in one of the games, I know we were both kind of really worried, like, oh, that's not a player you want to lose. And he ended up coming back and he was okay. So he ended up doing really well. And you already mentioned when we talked about offense, Chris Cloutier and his career year that he had. So he obviously quite literally improved statistically, but he also looked really, really good and just seemed very comfortable in his role once again.
Yeah, Chris, obviously you're going to be on the list when you have career years. Wires, Belter, and Farrell. Obviously, your rookies coming in, you want to see the progression, and we saw it, especially in Wires, not to just single him out, but we were critical of him multiple times. And once Dawson came in and, molded him the way he needed to be molded, it was perfect. Belter, like you said, very steady. You even had, I believe, he had a healthy scratch in there mixed in as well. So to play all 5 games in the playoffs, that shows that you're trusted by the coach as well. And Connor Farrell, as much as we don't believe faceoffs matter that much until they truly do, he won some big time faceoffs and adjusted his game perfectly. Dylan Robinson, like you said, I prefer if he was more of a transition guy than just a stay at home defender, but I thought he got very much better at that. The one I really want to just illustrate a little bit more here, I know we're running a bit long here. 3 more awards. We really got to speed this up. Justin Martin. I thought I was very critical of him last year until the playoffs. In the playoffs, he stepped up his game and was noticeable to at least a viewer like me who watches even though I might not be watching where the ball is, I'm watching what the players are doing without the ball and when the ball's not near them. And he stepped up his game massively in the playoffs to me. That just carried over to this year. And you said it perfectly. When you're not talked about and when you're forgotten you're on the team, when you're a defender, that's exactly what you need. And that's exactly what Justin Martin was this year. So it's 6 great nominees for this award here, and you definitely want to be the winner of this one. So we'll move on. Get it, Rook or newbie. It's the rookie of the year or the newcomer of the year. We added that last year because there was not very many rookies on this team last year, but there are this year. Here are the nominees for the Get It Rook / Newbie Award. Last year's winner, Dylan Robinson, year 1, Tehoka Nanticoke, good company to be associated with. Nominees: Cam Wires, Zach Belter, Corey Highfield, Paul Dawson, Emerson Clark, Connor Farrell, Christian Watts, and Steve Orleman. When you heard a lot, Phil, you got a lot of new names associated with this team, especially coming into camp, but a few big-time names on this list.
Yeah, there's one in there in particular that hurts to the core of me, and that is... I know. Christian Watts. And with what Dietrich was saying, I mean, we'll have to see what the veterans end up doing. I thought he did a good job in the very, very limited time that he got in his 2 games. I thought he seemed like he played a little bit of a Kyle Buchanan style role where he was setting picks on the right side of the offense, but he was also going into the boards really hard, getting those loose balls, sprinting off the field. He had that kind of mentality to add to that right side, and he only played in 2 games and then he was released. So we'll see what happens there. And like I was kind of cut myself off with Dietrich mentioning that there's going to be a huge roster crunch. I don't know. We will have to see what the veterans end up doing, if anyone retires or there ends up being a spot on that offense. But if everyone returns, he could be once again the outside looking in. We've mentioned a lot of these players. Corey Highfield was an interesting acquisition and ended up doing really well, honestly, when he was in the game. And this is another situation.
Eat those words.
I will eat them a little bit. Um, but he was an interesting player in the fact that just when, I mean, it's one of those things again where the depth on this team is just so insane that you can have a player like that and not have to use him at all. And when he was in, I thought he did a really good job playing defense and then helping out on offense. He was a true transition player, similar to a McKay, where he played multiple shifts on defense and multiple shifts on offense, where he was doing a little bit of both for the entire shift, not running from defense and staying out on offense. He would have full shifts on offense, full shifts on defense. And I think it wasn't necessarily that he looked great or stood out in a good way, but he didn't stand out in a bad way. And on a team full of stars, that's also really impressive. And Emerson Clark, we have some reservations about. It's not, again, we've talked about it so much. It's not that he's a bad player by any means. He ended up getting into 5 games, and this isn't anything about him, his play style, his abilities. It's just what he added to the team we felt wasn't necessarily what the team needed. And he was just trying to play that Brandon Robinson role without being 6'3", 200 pounds and being an absolute beast. He's just a little bit smaller of a player and not to us what the Bandits really needed when he got in games, but he still did okay when he was in. And it's not necessarily anything against him. It's just where he fit on this team, and all the other players we have already talked about, except Orleman. I think him winning the battle, especially out of camp, you and I had Shanahan, and Shanahan ended up winning it for a really long time. Then when Vince got injured and all these players started getting in, these goalies, and Shanahan played a game and then ended up starting a full one, then did a half game. Orleman did one, and I thought Orleman to me was the better goalie of the two in a ridiculously small sample size, and then he won the backup job for the rest of the year. I thought he did a good job, so we'll have to see what the goalies, all 4 of their futures, hold on this team moving forward.
Yeah, Belter, Wires, and Farrell, along with Watts, were the rookies. Orleman, Dawson, Highfield, and Clark were the newbies. I think a couple names stand out more than the others just because of the play on the field they actually got. I mean, Highfield played in a few games. Emerson Clark got in a few games. Watts got in a couple games. Orleman played in one big time game. So you can only take them for a grain of salt. But Wires, Belter, Dawson and Farrell had the majority of the playing time out there. So it really comes down to who impacted the game the most and who made their names in Bandits history the most, at least according to us. But this is definitely an award you want to win based on prior winners. So we'll move on. Got a couple more here. Undisputed sleeper. It goes to the under-acknowledged player. We should just name this the Phil Award because these are his type of players. Last year's winner, Brad McCulley. Brad, good luck in Vancouver and continued success out there. Year 1 was Kyle Buchanan. So that's the type of player we're looking for here. The nominees, Justin Martin, Brandon Robinson, Kyle Buchanan, and Nick Weiss. Kyle Buchanan is looking to be a repeat winner on this award here.
Yeah, as we were getting to this award, I was talking to myself mentally, and I was like, this is my kind of award. And then you mentioned it. These are the kind of players that I love, the unsung heroes of the team, the ones that do all the dirty work but don't get any of the credit. I don't know why. I've always kind of gravitated toward these kind of players or backup goalies for the Sabres for some reason. I don't know. But I really like them. And Justin Martin, we already talked a ton about, but I mean, just to kind of go over what we're saying with Martin. I mean, he played in 15 games, which is a lot. He only had 3 points, not a lot, 23 loose balls, not a lot, and 11 caused turnovers, not terrible, but not a lot. And it's those numbers that, if you just look at Justin Martin's numbers statistically, you look at that, you're like, oh, he's only an okay defender, when that's just not the truth. He is a very solid one-on-one
He's covering the
stay-at-home
opponent's
defender.
top player the majority of the time.
Right. It's, your top cornerback on the Bills, or your Trey White from back in the day, going up against a team's number 1 wide receiver, covering him the entire game and just trying to focus on that one player. He's not out there to get loose balls. He's not out there to cause turnovers. He's out there to disrupt the number 1 player on that team, and he does an incredible job of it. And again, being on that top player and not getting your name called out as being burned very often, that is exactly the kind of player that he is and what makes him so good. I mean, if you can go up against a team's number one and we're not calling you out for, oh, you got burned 4 or 5 times for these goals, that's what you want to be. You want to be that quiet player. Brandon Robinson, same thing. Again, stats aren't there for him. He's not flashy. He ended up with 17 points, 9 goals, 8 assists. For him, not really a bad season. He somehow gets these magical goals like the potential goal of the year flick over Rose, which was just magical to watch. But he's out there to be that disruptor on the left side. He causes a lot of picks. I mean, honestly, across the whole field this year, you saw him on the right side, left side, just causing chaos for the offense to do what it does best. And it's that kind of player that, again, the stats are not there necessarily for that player, but he's out there a lot of shifts when he was healthy, and he's out there for a reason. And it's not necessarily to get stats, it's to allow other players to have the time, space, and room to get the stats that they do. Kyle Buchanan, we talk about this role literally every single year since he's been here. He's just that kind of player. He is, to me, and I think to you, simply irreplaceable. What he is out there, the hustle that he has, the timely goals he gets. I mean, even to kick off that final game 2 with a shorthanded behind the back spin kind of goal. I mean, it's just those kind of little plays. Like you mentioned, the Georgia game time goal where he's just crowding around the crease and picks up a rebound and buries it while no one else is even in the area. Those plays, I mean, Kyle Buchanan's always going to be on this kind of list, and he just does such an incredible job that I do not think anyone else can really replace him. So I do hope he is back. We'll have to see what he's thinking, but he would be another player that is welcomed back. And then Nick Weiss, like we kind of mentioned, Priolo and a player like Dawson toward the end of the season, they kind of overshadow. I mean, Priolo and Weiss to me are your Dane and Josh of the defense, where one gets, is the captain, gets all the awards and gets all the recognition, while the other is still doing an incredible job and just kind of gets shadowed a little bit. And Nick Weiss was that this year, kind of like he is every year. But I think this year he really kind of showed through, especially with the 29 points he was able to put up. And he also had some big time goals and big time situations. One of the main heart and souls of this team, but again, kind of quietly goes into the night unless he's out there throwing haymakers because he got punched in the face with a cheap shot.
Yeah, I think the perfect definition for this award is none of these guys are going to be on the majority of the people's fan favorites list or even in their top 3 or 5. But the Bandits don't win a championship without these integral pieces. And they all have their little niche roles on this team that the team doesn't roll without it. Like a car needs all these different parts to be running down the street. These pieces are what makes that car go round. And I mean, we already talked about the majority of them. Everybody knows my opinions on a guy like Brandon Robinson, that this offense is not the same without him causing havoc and setting those hard picks. And his role increased even more when they traded Brad McCulley out the door. So he's an integral piece on what makes those lefties go round. So I love each one of these. This one's, I'll admit, this was the one that was one of the toughest decisions for us, just based on all 4 of these players should be winners of this at least sometime down the road, if not just this year. So good luck to all 4 of them on the award that'll be in the mail on Monday. But we'll move on to the next one here. Give me more. It's what we want to see more of or needs to step up. Phil, the age difference between 3 of these and the other one is massively. And I'll start over the young ones. Zach Belter, Dylan Robinson, Cam Wires, all 2022 first-round draft picks. Want to see more of them and step up and continue to grow into those next wave of Buffalo Bandits defense that this team has always been known for, and what I think is a solid core on that back end of the next wave of young defenders for this team. And then Matt Vince. And I think it's pretty clear and obvious why he was on this list, because we just want to see more of him because his stats just stunk this year. Right, Phil? That's the reason we have him on this list?
Yes, he needs to step up, and it's about time he either steps up or gets off the team. I need a different goalie in here, like some of these passionate fans feel at the beginning of every single season since he's been here, that we just need someone better between the pipes, and he's not doing it. He might be the
Phil's
best
lying.
goalie.
We want more. Come back, Matt Vince. Like, what does this podcast have to do to convince you? I'll be the chauffeur. I will drive to Canada, pick you up, and drive you back so your foot doesn't have to be on the gas pedal. I will lay in front of puddles for you. I think I said this on the last offseason. I'll lay in front of puddles so your feet don't get wet. I will carry an umbrella over your head so your head doesn't get wet. I'll put my hands underneath your chin so you don't drop crumbs on your shirt. Whatever you need, I'll do, Matt Vince. So whoever needs to be in, I'll be his butler for a year. I don't care what I have to do. If Matt Vince will come back, I will do whatever.
What you have to do is work out with him every single time he works out, and you have to do
Done.
the same
I'll do it.
workout that he does.
I'll do it. I don't care. I'll do it.
But yeah, Vince, when I was reading the Adler retirement letter, from all of lacrosse and everything like that, like, I mean, Adler wasn't a huge long-term part of this team, but he was a big part of that, first championship in 15 years. And it was really exciting to see that year and exciting for Adler, and to see that retirement letter. It was a little bit sad, but exciting for him and his future. And I was just kind of slightly imagining, like, if that ever pops up kind of randomly or wherever.
Don't you do it.
For Matt Vin, I think I would assume we would just rip it, right? Just rip it in half. However, we have to
it would never make the airwaves. It would never get shown to public. No.
But yeah, Vince, we just want to see forever, I would assume.
Literally, we just want to see more.
Literally, I just want him back next year. Belzer, Robinson, and Wires, all three of them were also under most improved, and we want to see them step up even more. It is nothing necessarily against them. We don't think they're playing bad by any means. It's just continue to grow, continue to be the next wave. Like you mentioned, that was a really great way to put it. All these players were drafted to be the next wave of defenders when the Priolos eventually hang it up, when the Weises eventually hang it up. I mean, when these players kind of start to, phase out, I mean, it's time to get the young guys in there. I think this is a great starting defensive core of very, very young players that can continue to grow and take over that next wave. And whenever that leadership is eventually passed, I think these three will be ready to step into that position. And we were just expecting them to continue to grow, continue to get better, and be a part of that next wave and that next core.
So the last award here, we don't have the nominees yet because it's the fan favorite. We started it last year. The year one, it was kind of our own fan favorites, and
I think we were right.
We went with Max Adler. Last year, the fans spoke, and it was Tehoka Nanticoke by a landslide. It was 86 total votes cast. Nanticoke had 25% of the vote. 15 total players got at least one, but no other player got double-digit votes. As of this recording, 120 votes are in. Polling is still open until the end of Saturday, so get your votes in. It is a very, very close race. I haven't fully counted. I've done a rough count in my head, but it's still a wide open race. It's between like 5 or 6 different players. There's so many players that got votes. So make sure that you go to the social media sites, on the Facebook pages for the Buffalo Bandits, whatever it is out there, just on our own page. You can vote there. I'll count it all up. We'll get a grand total, but it's a close race. So make sure your voice is heard for the fan favorite for an award, because we'll be shipping that out on Monday. But yeah, it's a very close race right now. Polls are still open. Go vote. I sounded like a politician there, right?
A little bit, yeah. You did a nice job. I mean, I would prefer you didn't switch into politics, but
oh, never.
If you ever need to at least tell people to vote, you did a great job. You can be a unbiased, neutral, go vote infomercial. I think you can handle
I love
that.
How much it pay?
Yeah, volunteer.
As much as this? All right, Phil, that will conclude the nominees for this year's BSC Awards show, the 3rd annual that we've ever hosted. Phil, is there anything else with this show before we shut it down? Go shine those trophies and get the awards ready for Monday's show.
No, I think we're good. I think for at least a few episodes now, as we close it out, we're just going to have to continue to remind ourselves that the Bandits are back-to-back champions, and it feels amazing, and I love it, and I'm still Still not off that high yet. Still going through old highlight, not old, but recent highlights of the entire playoffs and all the post-game interviews and watching everything and going back through the content of the celebration after, whether it was on the field or the day later, just kind of still injecting all of that into my veins and have not really come down quite yet from the incredible victory. Still loving it. And congrats to the Bandits again, back to back. Love it.
Yeah, the only other thing I'm going to add here is I'm going to make a note right now. It's going to call, I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but each show, until we find out what's happening with Matt Vince, I'm going to come up with one other thing I will do for Matt Vince if he comes back and plays one more year with the Buffalo Bandits.
I like it.
So I'll start the show off for each one of those of what I will do for Matt Vince if he does return. And whoever is in charge out there, Steve Dietrich, Stat Loeffler, John Tavares, Dane Smith, Josh Byrne, who cares? Whoever wants to pass this off to Matt Vince, I will keep a running list of everything that I will offer for Matt Vince to come back and play. And you can make that a legal binding document if you want.
Just come back, please.
Yeah, just come back.
Just
please,
we want
sign like maybe by Monday, and I won't have to start this list. So we'll start with there. But thank you all for listening to another episode of the Buffalo Sports Collective. On Monday's show, we will hand out all of these awards. The envelopes are already ready. They're right here, guys. All the nominees are freshly in my hands. So we'll find out on Monday who won all these coveted awards, the most coveted award in sports and entertainment history. Thank you to our sponsors, Tap That Tap Room and Mr. Sizzles, for sponsoring this show and this episode. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Visit our website at buffalosportscollective.com. You can read Phil's final article, The Buffalo Bandits Season. Came out on Tuesday. It's still on our website. Check out our store on our link tree on our social media sites or on the shop tab at the top of the website. Follow our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure you leave us that review on Apple and Spotify. Until the award show on Monday. Bye-bye.